Here we go. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the RPG Daily. I'm Richard Quiner, and we are having the Game Master's Craft. This is episode 5 in 5 days. It's been quite an accomplishment, very tiring in this LA heat, but we got a really good guest today, and I've actually interviewed him once before, and by my technical failings, I was not able to release that video. So now, a year and a half later, we have Ray, aka Got DM, and so we're gonna get into that. Oh, hold on. Not yet. All right. Now, I'm having all the technical problems today. This is
we got it, man.
really fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ray, welcome to the stream. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone what is it you do, and yeah, we'll start with that.
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. I know we did this about a year and a half ago, but it was a fun day in a park, and it was a great time to meet you. So I just want to say thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was. Yeah. Well, Ray, I do on Instagram. I'm Got DM. I help people out with crafting and just rudimentary D&D tips and whatnot. So, but yeah, hit me up on Instagram, GOT_DM.
Give me 1 second. I think we're live, but I'm getting some technical
No worries.
errors from my fiance. She's like, it's not working. Was that from, which link was that?
This is on your, when you just click on it. It works on one side, but it doesn't work on another.
Oh, refresh it. This is the greatest. Delete that. While I'm going to go look at this, Ray, why don't you tell your history? I've already heard your history of the game and how you got into it. Why don't you tell the people who are watching about it, because they haven't.
Sure. I've been playing now this game for about 2.5 decades, so it's about, I'd say, about 26 years now. So yeah, DM'd really early. I think we made a joke about it when we were actually talking, because Rich actually asked me, how many years have I been a player? And I'm going, probably 20 something hours, if that. So it's a rarity. I mean, one of the situations I'm in is like, I really, really love DMing. So I played probably about 2 or 3 games and then just said, you know what? I'm just going to DM, and I've been doing it the entire time. So
it's been a very long time, and I think you have one of the most technical issues are fixed now.
Oh, perfect.
And it was funny because just before we went live, I was saying how easy it is and how perfect the technology is, and then everything broke.
That's the gaffed us, man.
You have created one of the most living kind of worlds for your players of all the unpublished worlds.
Yes.
And how long did you say you were running games in this?
Yeah, we've been running games for, like I said, 2 decades. I mean, it's been just a constant stream, constant situation. We've got players that have been with me for, the 20 plus years, and we've got players that just kind of jumped on. Just in a 5-minute nutshell, what it basically is our world is a living, breathing body where we put a lot of the onus on multiple groups. So you have, at one time, our peak was we had 65 players and I'd say about roughly, 15 to 20 active Discord players at the time. And the way the stories and the plot lines are, we have active plot lines that have been available for 2+ decades. So it's just me kind of connecting the strings. I feel like Charlie on Always Sunny in Philadelphia when I'm like putting my hand on the wall.
Exactly.
But yeah.
It all comes back to Ray.
Right? It's like you're just like, it's all the same town. But yeah, no, I mean, it's that, and it's put so much onus on the players. But it's really cool because where the players can come up to a situation and they're going like, and interact with something, and I'm telling them, oh, I have a map, and here's a map that I drew back in middle school, and they're going, oh, shut up, and I'm like, here. And they look at it and their heads just blow up. I mean, at that point, it's not something that we've made it up, but it's something that we've collectively put together. So.
Yeah, which it's quite a feat. Having a world going for 20 plus years with that many players is no small task.
Yeah.
Especially considering the tools. That's what I want to know. What are the tools you use to keep all this organized? Because 20 years ago, We
They
didn't
didn't
have
exist.
everything.
Yeah, and if I were to clarify, we went at maximum at 60, I would say, within the last 3 years.
Oh,
So prior to that, it was a lot of like I would be running games when I was in the military, out, whenever wherever I was at, or what we did a lot was at the time we just used Word docs. And we would just email each other. But if somebody hit the you know what I mean? If somebody didn't save, if somebody, it wasn't like you had auto save or all that.
yeah.
So a lot of it was that, but that's where the old school in me comes in. Is I actually still use just a simple voice recorder, and during my sessions I record them, and so then I'll have this like massive hard drive and listen through things. But it just helps me kind of quantify all those message or all the plot cycles, I guess, best way to put it.
Yeah,
So
which has been quite a few. And I
yeah,
understand you actually gave me an idea last time we talked, which I then implemented in one of my games, which has been
awesome.
amazingly successful. The characters have loved it. And it's the idea of kind of living weapons that just stick and grow with the players. Could you reiterate that concept?
Absolutely. So what I found initially was that you had players that were to find like a +1 ring, and they would take the ring with them, and they would go through all of these adventures, and then when the +2 ring showed up, they would just toss it. And I'm going, wow, that piece of material that you just had just went through all of these cool adventures. So I had this idea where I was like, why don't I make the magic items living, breathing entities, where it's like they would complete adventures, they would complete this, and like for example, if that ring that we were just making an example of, if that ring was at like a negotiation or an assassination plot, all of a sudden you get these benefits. And so now this magic item is just an amalgamation of all of these adventures this player had, and it's personable and it's attached. And it's almost like, why would I ever get rid of this thing? Because it can grow with me. You can always toss it for the +2 sword or the +2 dagger because you're like, maybe that weapon has history and I want to investigate that. But for the most part, you have players that are holding on to things and now they give them a name, and now it's personable. It's no longer the +1 ring of protection. It's Mythonar, the defender of whatever, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's all of that. And I'm going, how do I engage my players at that level where even just the simplest things or simplest monotonies are engaging? And that's how I did it. So I'm glad you took the rule and really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, my players are loving it. They've gone a little too far. I took it an extra step and made them participate in figuring
Yeah.
out how their weapons will progress with them.
Oh,
And so I have
okay.
this one guy, and this is just side story. He's a dwarf battle rager who then decided he's gonna take his great axe, which is the special weapon, and he welded a mace head on the butt end of it and a spear head on the tip. So now he like can hit with everything.
Yeah.
It's short of him having this magic. We call it a Swiss Army axe, basically.
Sure.
It's got everything. And it's really funny in that regard. He's loves it. Everyone makes fun of him for it,
Yeah.
but they've embraced that idea and they are very attached to their weapons,
Oh,
which
that is
I will
awesome.
use against them one day.
If you love it, you will use them again.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so cool.
So
That's
that
so
was an
cool.
idea that I took away from our last conversation, and now it's been about a year and a half. So I want to know from you what has been going on lately. Have you brought in anything new, crazy ideas into your world? What are your secrets now?
Actually, it's funny because I've actually taken a break since January, since this whole thing kind of came up. I've taken a little bit of a break from, I'm sorry, not January, March. Just kind of get my chakras in line or whatever you want to call it, just because like having that many plot lines eventually gets to the point where it was tiring.
I
And we
imagine.
ended up a major plot of the story. So I was like, I'm going to take a step back because we've been going for this long and take a breather. But for the most part, I mean, what I've been doing is I've been doing one shots in our world. And it's really cool because like I can parse out different important events in history that the players have all interacted with, and pick out like, hey, what about this little detail? Like when they saw this NPC, who was this NPC? Why is this part important? And it's these little one shots that I now have my players doing where they can really fulfill those little details.
Mhm.
But also the cool part about it is now they're able to pepper in like the secret messages and whatnots, and actually I can go back and give them to the players. So it's been really cool at that point. The other one too is I've been doing a lot with just Got DM as a brand and trying
Mhm.
to see where it can go. And we've got a couple things coming out. I would say in the next 2 months. So I'm gonna keep a lid on that because I am definitely one that will overspeak my bounds when it comes to certain things. But we've been working on something
All
in the
right.
secret, and I'm planning to reveal it very soon.
Nice. We'll have to bring you back once that's revealed, and talk about whatever the secret is.
Yes, absolutely.
That sounds very intriguing.
Yeah.
Your brand Got DM. If any of the video viewers want to go look them up on Instagram, you have a crafting niche, we could say. You are a monster when it comes to foam, coffee stirrers, and hot glue.
Yeah.
And more recently, I saw you did this like waterfall scene.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That was my reaction. Was what? How did you what were your first steps getting into crafting? Because I know that's a thing a lot of DMs want to try, but it can be kind of daunting. When we look and see the amazing crafter, we can look at it and be like, I don't think I could ever do that. But, everything starts with baby steps.
Yeah.
What are the first baby steps of getting into crafting?
I think it's just the passion to want to do it. Quite frankly, I think I shared with you this a year ago. I grew up in absolute poverty in a third world country, so it was, you didn't get toys, you built them. So my thing on that was like, just kind of, it comes from a place for me where like I wanted to build something for my players that they can see and it's tangible and they can interact with it. I would say if you're brand new into this, getting especially if you're a new DM. Getting your players to get involved, making dungeon tiles, spend 1 3-hour session painting dungeon tiles. Somebody was asking me the other day if I'm a new DM or a new crafting DM, like, do I have to buy all the expensive tools and all the expensive hardware and everything? And you really don't.
Yeah.
When I first got into this, there's just a blade.
Yeah,
quite frankly, all you needed, just a knife. That's it. You know what I mean? That's all you needed. And something heavy to measure with. You didn't need all these like fancy gadgets. But I will tell you, as you get in, get the hunger or the passion for it to keep building and keep interacting with that world, you can upgrade to like Proxon cutters and to like different types of glues and magnets, and try different things. But I'd say the first part to start with is just the passion to start is one. So. That's a
good way to think about it. I mean, we play D&D in the same way, where we start just by trying to feel it out and see if we enjoy it, and then we dive in and spend all our money on books and minis and dice.
Yeah.
But it is just baby steps getting in there, and it's also the same with being a dungeon master. You've been running games for 20 plus years, so I want to know what is your one piece of advice for new dungeon masters? Maybe it's something that you wish you had learned when you first started that you've learned over time.
Absolutely. I am extremely analytical, and if you ever read a disc profile, I'm probably the high I. I think that's the one that's analytical. I don't know. But as far as but as far as I'm going with that, wait, reiterate the question one more time.
What is one thing you wish you had learned or knew when you first started?
I guess the one thing I would think of the first time I started, I have to really think about it. It's been a while. Don't take yourself too seriously. And I think that's the one where I was kind of going with like being heavy analytical. I would over prep, I would overdo, I would try to figure out every facet of a story and try to memorize that. And I'm like, I got to do it this way. When in the reality, just being at the table, just interacting with your players, just having a day where you can just make a story and everybody roll dice and have fun with it. That's what everybody's looking for. They're not expecting Game of Thrones quality, plot lines or anything like that. And sometimes it is where you go to a game and maybe you come fully unprepared, but what you know how to do is improv on the point, look at the players and how they interact with the story and keep the energy at 11. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I would say I wished I knew as a DM is just don't take yourself too seriously. Enjoy it. Have fun, because that's what your players are looking for.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. I think I'm going on a limb and going to say like 90% of DMs when they first start over prepare.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a safety. You feel safe, right? When you're prepared enough, you feel like you can take on anything. And then that first moment hits where the party says, I'm going to turn left instead of right. And you're like, wait. And your brain kind of breaks a little bit where you're like, I didn't prepare left because they're supposed to go right. That's where all the clues are pointing. So what are your tips? Let me try to phrase this properly.
Sure.
When you are preparing for a session, what are the main things you look to to make sure you definitely have prepared? And where do you draw the line and say, no, that's too much?
Really, at mine is how I understand my players. I will do more on session zeros, just learning what they want to do, what their character motivations are. And even that, like prior to the game, like I am probing with a ton of questions. It's like, who's this? Who's that? What's this background mean? The reason why I'm doing it, and I'm looking at my players' interactions, because when I'm at the table, I don't have to over prep. Personally, for me, I don't have to over prep because I'm improving and using what the character emotions are, what the players are not just telling me, but what their body language is telling me. And then I have, like, I've got my random tables and whatnots, but for the most part, my job as a DM, what I'm looking to do is keep the energy high. I would say I'd be a little bit more on the rule of cool side, but as I'm interacting with the players, I'm looking for, are you engaged? Are you taking that step to bring those extra dice, talk about in character voices? Like, how do I bring you from being a meager player? And you've seen me do it at D20 Sundays, where I have a player that's sitting in the background, and the first thing I'll do is I'll jump on a chair, I'll point at him, and I am just going, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm pulling them into the club. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get them to join us.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good skill to have, and I think I've seen you put it into play in very large groups as well. Like the first time I came out to a Dungeon Sunday, we ended up, I want to say it was like a 15 people all going in initiative, and you were running it. What is your process when handling that many people? How do you do that?
There's a certain level of just drunken sailor bravado. No, I'm just kidding.
There it is. Drink heavily.
Actually, right? No, I mean, I think at that point, look, you have 5 players. I've run sessions with 20 players, if not more. And where I look at that, and this is going to kind of sound not say cliche, but you have to take yourself away from the situation. And I run it like a classroom. I go, how do I engage sub-pocket groups where I'm now going from 20 people to 5 people? And then from there, I'll try to engage one group while pointing to another. And maybe it's like I have, like, here's a good example. The event that I was running you guys with, where I had 15 players, you had to chase a horse, you had to attack, you had to defend, you had to negotiate, all at the same time. It was a timed situation. So you had these players going at like 11 the entire time, and my job on that is like it's like the guy at a graduation, just keep hitting the volleyball, or keep hitting the beach ball up. So as one player goes to take a seat and contemplate, like, it was a good situation when we had Hamish go, I'm going to go in front of this and be the neutral guard. That was your player. And I saw you take a seat almost to think about what's Hamish's next turn. And I looked at you and I was like, no, get back up.
Yeah, I remember that. You were like, nope, it's go time.
It's go time. Yeah, right now. And that's what it was. And so, like, when you had hesitations, I would go, okay, you're up on deck. And I would tell the other player, get ready for your actions. And I'd see you take a seat again. And I'm like, no. You're still going. They're just getting on deck. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they're looking at you and you're going, oh my gosh, I'm getting my heart racing. But then the other thing I was doing was I would play heart rates at about 180 beats per second on one of my speakers. So the entire time I had this playing in the background, just this do 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 do, and then I would ease up the music a little bit just to get the attention going. And when we rolled the dice, I'd hit pause so you guys could hear that noise. So I was trying to engage on just multiple levels. That's what I came down to.
Yeah, I gotta say that was one of the most unique gaming experiences I've had in that one, where at one moment we were all standing in a circle. There was no table, and we were rolling dice on the pavement, and everyone was like looking over it like we were gambling in the street, just waiting for that 7 to hopefully hit on our attack. It was quite an experience.
And as a DM, one of the things I loved doing with that was, if you didn't notice it, I pulled all my nostalgia players in one group. It was you, it was Jeff Altman, it was a bunch of them. It's just people that I think have known, have been playing for a very long time. And I pulled you guys over there because I was like, you're not rolling on the table. I want you rolling on the ground. And I was trying to get that emotion of, those days we'd be back in school, because it wasn't sexy to play this game. And I was like, what did we do? We rolled on the floor and we made sure nobody else was looking. And so I try to get that emotion. And I'm like, when I saw that and took a step back, my friend Keith looked at me and he goes, this is so awesome.
That was a really good a good time. You have a lot of 20 years of experience doing that to your players, I'm imagining, in various things. You mentioned that you play a lot on, or used to play quite a bit on Discord or
Yeah.
online. And
Yeah.
right now, that's more important than ever since everyone's stuck at home. What are some of the unique challenges you've had playing online, and how have you found ways to overcome those?
So I guess the first I would premise it was I grew up on text-based role playing on AOL chat rooms. So
Okay.
that's where a lot of my basis is from. Because when I started getting into D&D, I was like, where can I play? Well, meetups and all of that did not exist. So
Mm-hmm.
you were in AOL chat room, Neverwinter Nights. That's where I was at.
Oh, okay.
But as far as the challenges have been, it's not getting the players together. It's trying to invoke the same emotions that you would have at the tabletop
Mm-hmm.
via online, and with things that I would say I love the online gaming. I use Zoom. I use Zoom as a portfolio of website platform, but I go back to kind of what there's something about being in front of each other where
Mm-hmm.
you can see one another, you can react to one another in real time. So I miss that. But the best way I've kind of gotten around that was not having big set terrain pieces. No, it was images so I can invoke people to look at things. It was audio
Mm-hmm.
in the background. It's things like Spotify for secret music and things like that. Sorry. It was things like that, like trying to engage them at a different level via online. So I've used Zoom, I'm using Spotify for music, I'm using YouTube Red where I can, you know what I mean, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like I'm trying the different platforms, and I'm loving it already. Discord's really good to kind of get your players together at one point, to jump on those things and obviously not get trolled to death, because I tried to do a public Zoom and that didn't work out so
Oh,
well.
yeah. I imagine that would be a
So,
bit
yeah,
crazy.
it was a little daunting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a failed attempt, but yeah, no, just getting them together is just great. And with everything happening right now, I can't wait. I've been telling a lot of my friends the minute we get out of this, I am just going to do the biggest D&D game ever possible. So I'm just gonna go to 11 at that point. So
Yeah. I think we're all kind of feeling that itch of like
yeah.
we need an in-person game
Oh
soon.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting though. I want to focus on one thing you said
Sure.
with the online gaming. Most people, when they play Roll20, or online in general,
Hmm.
especially with the virtual tabletops and the tools available there, they go this extra mile where they build out a full map. They draw in the lines for dynamic lighting.
Hmm.
They go through, and I know from my experience, doing one map in Roll20 that's
Hmm.
decent will take you about an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that's just visual
Oh
that the
man.
players won't always use. I did this. I had a dynamic lighting. One of the players went off the map as soon as they saw where they were at. They found their way out and were gone. But you mentioned you tend to go with pictures that evoke emotion,
Hmm.
keeping the energy up. I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's an interesting idea and a concept that not a lot of people think about. We see virtual tabletops, we think, oh, we need maps, we need this, but possibly even just a simple picture, like this is the alleyway, there's a picture of it.
Yeah.
Get that emotion, keep the game going quickly is an interesting idea, and I'm going to steal that from you
Yeah, I mean,
again.
I think for me, Rich, it's if you don't mind me calling you Rich,
Oh, that's
sorry.
fine.
Okay, I think it's for me is that whatever I bring to the table, be it my terrain, be it my digital sound or whatever have you, I cannot beat the human imagination. I can't.
Hmm.
It's not possible. Whatever I think it is, somebody else is just going to have a better picture to it, right?
Yeah.
So my last Zoom, I actually all I did was put a background like a bonfire sound, and I put a virtual background of a fire, and it looked like I was just in front of a fireplace having a conversation. And it's funny because like I would go out to screen share and I would just show like this is the alleyway, and then all of a sudden I would turn the audio to just like audio sounds of people moving around, people talking, people discussing. And at that point I'm going, wow, when the players would see their characters interact on the screen, it just was a whole different game.
Hmm.
And for me, I'm going, whoa, I don't have to set up 90,000 things at one time, and I'm getting exactly what I'm looking at out of this game. I think I'm going to explore this a little bit longer.
Yeah. That
So
that's really I haven't heard
yeah,
that tip before, so that's why I wanted to focus on that. That's
sure, yeah,
really neat. And I see in a lot of your answers are all about the player's emotions and kind of riding that wave and getting them kind of amped up and ready to go and in the
sure.
moment. what are some of your tricks for, let's say, if you wanted to get a scene, maybe the players are goofing off, having a good time, and what if a scene is coming up that's going to be very serious, possibly? Do you do anything to kind of slow that down, or do you let the players kind of guide that? What is your main method for guiding?
There is actually that's a very good point. If we're getting into an emotional situation, I gotta be honest with you, and this is full disclosure. Me coming into my games, I no longer write the plot lines to my games. I am as just as much player in that part. I feel like I play referee more than anything. But let's say the players do get themselves into this emotional moment. One of the things I love to do is I'll change up the sound in the background and I'll play with the audio. And what I mean by that is I'll reduce it down so then the players start looking at each other. I'll actually I'll start to lean in with my body language. And as I'm talking, I will no longer address the players by their real names. I'll go by their character names, and I keep pulling them in. It's almost that, like, once you get them listening to you, getting them intrigued and engaged in that moment, then you pull the rug from under them and just go, this is where that emotion comes from. And it's usually player driven. So if it's like a situation where the player may die, I'll get to the point where, like, I'll start talking really low so the players stop having side conversations, and then I'll put the highlight on the player and I'll go, I want you to describe to me what your player looks like. I want you to describe to me what they feel like. What's happening in that player's mind right now? Get it to the point where I'm going about 20 beats per second on, just as low as possible. And at that point, regardless of what I've done, I've kinesthetically linked it to something. I've emotionally linked it to something. So where now the players can just engage themselves purely based on, like, okay, now we're in this situation. I've got all the players' attention. How do I keep that now here? And if I were to say the last part, and sorry, I don't want to belabor this. One of the things too that does lean into just epic moments with our players. I explain to my players during session 0, if you're the player that wants to see epic moments for other players, and if we all do that at the table, our session will be amazing, because you're no longer looking at this as far as like me going, I have to be selfish with my character. If you're willing to go, let's make that person over there have this epic moment, then what comes out of that game is just amazing. And that's what keeps me coming back to the table, quite frankly.
That is a very good point, and building on that, I'm going to pick your brain on that one. Okay. It is a really great experience to have when the whole party is looking for the epic moments for everyone else, and that creates a nice form of sharing.
Sure.
But what do you do when you get that one or two players who they have to be involved in everything? How do you guide them to kind of get on the same level as other people to continue sharing that without pooping on their parade, so to speak?
And I think that's the other point too, right? Where I've had moments where, like, look, I've had a player come up and it was one of those things where this was a boss of a corporate event and he felt that I needed to be the high D on the disc profile. I had to be the person that tells everybody what to do. And if I show any kind of leniency or just vulnerability, I may be seen differently. And I said, you know what? No, just enjoy the game. Just take a step back. You were asking, sorry, one more time with your question. I want to make sure I hit this.
It was how do you get players who may be the type who want to be in the spotlight? How do you get on board for sharing it with others?
And so I think that's the one too, is that when you have players that always want to be on the front seat, always want to get to the front. As a DM, I've actually got to the point where I'm like, that's great. I want you to add value to this. Why don't we do this? You're talking about this plan. Go to the left here. I want you to discuss it with them. But before we do that, I'm going to give the floor to this character. For the next 3 minutes, I want you to describe X. And so it kind of puts a hold on the other player. It says, hey, I'm not stealing away your thunder. I'm not telling you cannot enjoy this game the way you want to. But I am telling you, as a DM, I'm going to give the spotlight over to your friend real quick. I'm going to have you do this over here. Once we get done with this, you are also going to listen to this. And then once we see value in that opinion, let's go ahead and put this back together. And it's a very classic thing we do in teaching, which is just to kind of isolate that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not saying like push it to the side, but make sure everybody is heard.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we do.
Interesting. So did you work as a teacher at any point?
I was a military instructor for many years. So
okay. Because I was like, I don't remember you mentioning being a teacher. Okay, so you're a military instructor.
I was a military instructor for many years.
Large children. How has that teaching? What are some things that you learned from being a military instructor that you've brought into your games, aside from the one you just mentioned?
Sure. I think the biggest one for me is just the ability to listen. It's the ability to go, look, you have a group of people that may not know what to look for in a game. They're looking for certain guidance, and they're looking how to enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it's listening to them, listening to their concerns. And I think that as a not just a military instructor, but as a teacher or as an instructor in general, you're looking for that. You're looking for, look, this person's got 3 hours. I've taken time to do this out of my day. I want to enjoy it. How do I enjoy it? But also knowing that, hey, sometimes you're going to have to let that person down because, PCs die once in a while. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually,
But
that's
I guess that.
I feel like a lot of teachers would end up making good DMs. I was talking with Logan Hanley the other day, and he's also a teacher, and he had a lot of experiences, and his teaching has influenced his DMing. Especially he started his little anecdote was he started running games for younger like high schoolers,
Sure.
and that was when he took the gloves off and he actually killed characters.
Yeah.
But his adult players he had handled a little more cautiously, and that's when he learned to give them a real challenge and push the players. So it's interesting how teaching has a really good connection to being a dungeon master, and because you're basically teaching at the same time, kind of.
Yeah. I would say 100%. I mean, somebody was asking me one day, they were asking me like, what have I brought from D&D into the real world? When I say real world, like kind of your daily life. And I'm going, adult learning principles. I have taken so many adult learning principle courses. I have taken just how to teach this kind of, how to teach this method or this style. And then just different analytical profiles. And I'm going, I'm probably sure I can do this just with my heavy analytical brain going, I could probably do this with the game. But I will tell you, that is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because you start heavy analyzing things and you're no longer analyzing the game, you're analyzing your players, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, that's where you don't want to be.
Yeah, that's dangerous. And so that's where I would say that it's like fall in love with the game, fall in love with the process, but have enough stance to go, this is reality and this is not where it's going to cross the borders. So
That's a good tip, because that is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit because
Sure.
you started recently, I'm going to say a couple weeks ago, you started posting house rules on your Instagram account. So I want to know some of your favorites. And at the end, I want to know, well, first let's start with some of your favorite house rules.
Sure. Two of my favorite house rules that I would say would be, the first one's going to be the long rest requires 2 rations and a short rest requires 1 ration. And I totally get, it's funny, I posted it up there and everybody was like, there's no way I'm going to eat that amount of food. I'm like, I used to have to eat a ton of MREs when I was in the service.
Yeah.
So
like, how much food is that in one
right?
ration?
That's a ton. Yeah, it's like 2,000 something, more than that.
MRE, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. But for me in the game, why I love it a lot, because you now had players go, I actually have to save money for rations. I have to go, how long are we going to be on this? Like, hey, dude, you're going to go saving this princess, whatever. You're going to go on this wild quest. That's going to take 6 days and we don't got food. I don't want to TPK because we don't have food, or the ranger's like, oh, we'll go hunting. And I'm like, yeah, that's assuming we have food that can be eaten there. Let's just go buy rations.
Yeah.
So it turned an entire metric of like, because you think about it, who uses rations, especially in a one shot, who uses rations?
Yeah.
Nobody does. So that's one of my favorite rules. The other favorite rule that I've been playing around with, it's recently become one of my favorite rules, is the relationships one I just did with the last, or the kind of the if your PCs are in a relationship, or they're kind of like brother and sister, or twins or something like that, and one of them goes down, you get +1 on, or if they fail a death save, you get like +1 to hit, and it can only go to a maximum like +3, right? And I started doing that because I'm like, it's not a lot to break the metric. It's not permanent. It's only +3. And like, look, if they go down, you're looking into like, death save economy. But I enjoyed it because when they went down, you had this player just kind of go, okay, let's not let that happen again. And it was almost like bringing in the story, and I could start pulling things from their story, like, those subtle moments they may see them in safety, and then play that into the combat. And they're like, yeah, no more. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to interact. You know what I mean? But I loved it, and that's one of my second favorite house rules.
That's a very interesting one that really plays on character relationships are always interesting. Siblings, are a fun thing, fun dynamic to have at the table. But I like how that takes it to that next level of, kind of the adrenaline of the situation plays into the mechanics there. Very interesting. Do you still come up with your own house rules, or have you kind of settled on your your pool of house rules?
Sure. I have house rules that I definitely cycle through, like stuff from like first edition and stuff like where I broke my teeth on, and things like, having a someone train you to be a new level. Like that was something back in first edition that was really huge. I brought that into my other games. I'm constantly changing the house rules per region in my world.
Oh.
I guess that's the first thing I premised it with, where it's like, where the players can interact with different states, different kingdoms, different capitals. I'll let them know, if you step into this state, this is the house rule in effect. So it gives me a little bit leniency to kind of just play around with my house rules. Second one too is if players want to try a different, not say different style of game, but they can explore, and it brings that new world building aspect where it's like, that could be generic country 101, but if I go to 201, I get better benefit from that. So so that's where it brings that travel element to it. So
interesting. That's a lot like the real world, really. Everywhere we go, there's different rules and cultures that we have to deal with. Moving on to the questions from the audience. That's so much good information that I'm like, I don't know what else to ask. We do have a question in the chat, and if anyone is still watching, if you will leave a question in the chat, we will answer it as we break this down. This guy, actually, who asked this question has been here all week asking some hard-hitting questions.
Oh, here it goes. All right.
This one's not crazy, though.
Damn it.
His one was... the question is, was the living weapons discussed before or rewarded? And I want to build on that after you answer that part of it.
Yes. Initially, so what I did with it was I do not enter this rule until the player gets the first magic item. And I want to premise that with most time in my campaigns, players don't get their first magic item to almost the 4th level. So it's a while before they get it. And the reason why is because as they do that, I'm going through this, I would say there's a primer. There's a primer to this activity. I ask the players if you could bring 3 items from home. You're going on an adventure, something that reminds you of home. What are they? And I take that down because I'm thinking in my head, what if that ring that was given to him by their mother suddenly became +1 protection because she didn't want to see her daughter go out to the real world? Things like that. Or vice versa, +1 to attack because it was I want to show the ruling person of this, X, Y, and Z. So it's not discussed up front. And that's the secret element of it. I bring that in once the magic item's there. But the players know that once they get their first magic item, the rules will change a little bit. That's kind of how I introduced it.
So it's not something that the players can necessarily go looking for. They can't say, "Oh, I know Ray's gonna do these magic items later. We gotta go find them." They just have to play the game, be in the world, live the story, and then when it's ready, when they're ready, when you're ready, they'll have their item somehow.
And full follow up with that, our players average out. I think the shortest time our players were in game is about a year and a half. So that's the shortest, and the most we've had right now continuous is about 13. So it's from a player that I have in Discord that's overseas. So it's that, right? It's like you're looking at this from, I'm telling the players that I'm investing in this just as much as you're willing to invest your time. So if you are going to give me whatever that time may be, we're going to go slow because we're going to build this out for you. So what you're left with, nobody can tell me the story about the +1 sword. Nobody can. But if I tell you, hey, what was the first item Hamish ever got? And the amount of things that come to the head, I'm like, that's what I'm going for. So
I can already answer that too.
Yeah.
At your Dungeon Sunday, I bought a whistle off of a guy thinking, because I didn't put it in my head. You told us before the game started, you're like, I'm going to lie to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah. And you had this whistle from this sketchy guy, and Hamish was convinced that it was magic, and it was not. And I even had to borrow some money from one of the other players to buy it, which for some reason they went along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember that moment and being like, oh, and then it all dawned on me a moment later. I was like, oh, of course. He's lying to us. Of course. Of course. But that was fine because I was a drunken master dwarf monk, and that's what I do, was make a fool of myself. That is really interesting. I'm going to throw my 2 cents on that same question about the living weapons. When I did it, I actually made it kind of a big moment for my players, where it was kind of the, here's the moment where you get your chosen weapons.
Sure.
I guess it kind of reminded me of the original Dungeons and Dragons cartoons. Like, the kids got their weapons. The one dude had the bow that could shoot the things, and so I kind of played that into it and built that into the story as these weapons are important for your success at beating the big bad guy. And that's what my players love, because they like epic things. They like to be they're basically the Expendables in a D&D game. So it's like Arnold, Stallone, Dolph Lundgren. It's all those guys in a Dungeons and Dragons group.
That's awesome.
And that's how they like to play it, and that's how we play it. Like, we run it so it's epic awesomeness all the time. And so that's how I brought in the living items, which have then leveled up over time. Yeah.
That's actually a very good point. If you take a step back, I mean, look, we both, is there a better way to do it? Do you bring it in? Do you tell them? At the end of the day, the end result is you're looking for engagement.
Yeah.
Really, you're looking for the players to be so invested into your game that they want to get these items and essentially build upon them. Now, one, to bring it in front of them and say, this is important. The other one to, hey, it's going to grow with you. But, I would even say both methods are equally important.
Yeah. I think it's really just how the group is, how they would how would you get them to interact most with this item?
Yeah.
Depending on the group. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
That ties into pretty much everything, though. It's like, how would you get your group to interact? Ray, I've run out of questions. You've answered everything so well that I'm like, I don't have a follow-up, because I asked you a question, and then you answer it, and then you answer my follow-up before I've asked it.
I'm so sorry.
I'm trying to have a show here, Ray.
Yeah, I do apologize.
That is great. I hope the viewers have had a good time. I hope they've learned quite a bit. Ray, again, thank you for coming on. After a year and a half of trying to get a proper interview, it took a global pandemic to make this happen. I've been saying that to everyone I've had on. It takes a global pandemic for me to get out and get some interviews done. So I appreciate you taking the time today and coming and chatting with us. It's been really good catching up. We'll have to do this again.
Absolutely.
Some crafting. I've only built pillars. I've only ever built a couple like foam pillars, and that was my crafting. But now I have all this time on my hands.
Right?
Suddenly. Anyways, guys, viewers, actually, here's what we're going to do. Tell everyone where they can find you online and what they can expect.
I can be found on Instagram, GOT_DM. Got DM, kind of like got milk if you think about it, but it's mostly for some other stuff. If you're getting into terrain crafting, if you just want someone to talk to at like 2 o'clock in the morning, because I pretty much do this at 2 o'clock in the morning, hit me up, DM me. I'm more than welcome to help out with any build that you have and provide you any kind of feedback. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me on here, Rich. It's just been a pleasure to see you. So
I'm also going to remind people, you do like a regular Q&A on your Instagram, like 24/7, it seems like. So if people have questions, that's a really great place to get in touch and ask some, crafting questions, dungeon mastering questions is right through your Instagram. So go follow him. The link is in the description of this video. So go check that out. Tomorrow we have another great guest coming on. It's Keith Healey from Fire and Dice. He has a show called Friday Night Fights which is quite interesting. And he has one of the more magnificent beards I've ever seen. This week is all beards. I have so many guys with these epic, amazing facial hair that really just makes me feel like I'm in high school again, just looking at these guys. So keep an eye out on the stream tomorrow. Thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you tomorrow, hopefully.
See ya.